We've been over both Poison Ivy and Riddler. Now we're ranking the live-action Catwomans. Catwomen? What's the plural for Catwoman? Catwomens? No, definitely not that one. Now, if you haven't seen my Poison Ivy and Riddler ranking videos, links down below like always. So is my Twitter and Instagram, which you should also follow. Despite both Ivy and Riddler being iconic Batman villains, Catwoman has appeared in live action more times than both of them. Therefore, this video will be a bit longer, since there's been 4 Ivies and 5 Riddlers, but there's been 7 Catwomens. However the hell I meant to say it. And similar to how I counted all 3 Poison Ivy actresses as one Poison Ivy for Gotham, I'm counting all 3 Catwomen from the '66 Batman show and movie as one Catwoman, since despite the fact that there are 3 actresses playing the character, they're all one character. Or at least, they're meant to be all one character. So let's begin. Last on the list is a cameo. Just like a Riddler cameoed in Titans, Catwoman also cameoed in another show, that being the Birds of Prey show from the early 2000s, where she would appear briefly in the first episode played by Casey Easlick, wearing a costume that's very much inspired by Batman Returns, which I suppose is a cool nod. The character does appear in 2 scenes, one of which I hate, where she is gunned down by Clayface before the show even starts. Now, I'm not saying the character can't die, because of course she can, and you kinda have to in this story setting because, well, you can't exactly have Selina around. However, by a simple gunshot by Clayface? This is just the prototype of Harley killing Batman. Now, I love Clayface. I think he can kill Selina. But why shoot her? It's just something so simple. This makes the character, for me, dead last, and just dead in general. Although I will admit, I do think the costume is fine for a TV show of this era. It's not great, but it's okay. Selina in this show is also a metahuman, which while I'm not against necessarily, however, it is an odd choice because when the character has been a metahuman beforehand, there's usually a reason. There doesn't seem to actually be one this time. She just is one. As is her daughter, the Huntress. Second to last is Halle Berry's Catwoman movie, which I'm betting is dead last for most people. This comes from the same era as Birds of Prey, which is a TV show that has a better Catwoman costume than this movie. This version isn't even Selina Kyle, but Patience Phillips. This movie, while silly and corny, it's even hard to watch because of its constant cuts and really odd choice zoom-ins, where there are characters talking that are not on screen for some reason. This could have been a fun, trash superhero movie. I am someone that likes bad movies. I'm not kidding. I can enjoy a bad movie with popcorn, soda, and just have a fun time. But this movie isn't just a bad movie, it's a bad, boring movie. It's not fun to watch. However, I do think it's slightly better than the Selina Kyle we saw on Birds of Prey, since this version of Catwoman actually does something. However, it's not by much. I almost did rank this dead last, but I do think it's slightly better because at least she actually does something. I also do not blame Halle Berry for this portrayal of the character, because I do think she definitely is trying her best. However, the writing and the costume designs and everything is working against her. Nobody, and I mean nobody, can make a scene about you rubbing catnip on your face come across as credible. Although points to her for trying. I do think she is a very good actress. This just is the worst role ever that she's ever been, ever had. Which she herself has even said. Going on to trash on this movie herself, which she's saying it, so why can't I? I also think that there's a level of sexism here because it's being marketed with a girl power feel. However, the main villain is Evil Makeup Company. Owner Laurel. Laura or Laurel, I forget. I actually watched this movie 2 days ago to prep for this video and I already forgot the main villain name. It's Lore something, played by Sharon Stone. The costume is also just awful. just awful. I know Halle Berry is very attractive, but a leather bra is not the best choice. Maybe for a proto Catwoman costume, but not the main one. In fact, the proto Catwoman costume in this actual movie is much, much better. It's not great, but in comparison, it's so much better. Fourth place is light years better than the other two so far, which is Anne Hathaway. I know, I'm about to get yelled at in the comments, but yet again, this is my own personal opinion. I found this version of the character too watered down. She wasn't bad, however, the level of infliction in the character's crazy side was kinda lacking. Selina is meant to be a bit of a nutjob, which is what makes her fit with Bruce so well. I do think her action scenes were some of the best in the movie, maybe even the whole Nolan-verse. And I really do like the costume. In fact, I think it's the best Catwoman costume on the list. Very practical and fitting the world of this Batman. However, the characterization of Selina in this movie, I think, is just a little too basic. She doesn't have that bizarre pizzazz factor. And I do think the character also isn't cat enough, if that makes sense. I know it's meant to be a play on the cat burglar theme. However, I think this version has no real connection to cats, which I think is important for the character of Selina. Although, yet again, some people just hate that too. And I think that means that Anne Hathaway must be the best Catwoman because she isn't too cat-like. Which, to be fair, is fair. I can see where people are coming from with that idea. However, I think there can be a happy medium where the character isn't campy like Halle Berry's Catwoman with the cat-like ideas, but it's still an accent to the character. Anne Hathaway was a really good Catwoman, just not, I think, better than the other ones on the list. Upcoming, I mean, not the ones that are below her. She is much, much, much better than ones below her. Fourth place is the Batman 66 show played by Julie Newmar, Lee Merriweather, and Eartha Kitt. This version is very much keeping in tone with the show, as in it's not serious. However, all three women clearly are having fun playing the character, and they all do a great job. Even though the show itself might not be seen as the most serious iteration of most of these characters, it's still a huge factor in the majority of the characters' popularity and how the characters evolved. Because, fun fact, Catwoman at the time was not in the comics anymore. The character disappeared for years, only being brought back because the character became so popular from the show. Despite the fact that the three women have a very distinct look from each other, even down to being different ethnicities, they all still feel like the same character. However, with some subtle changes. For example, Julie Newmar feels more flirty, while Eartha Kitt feels more villainous. However, she also is still flirty with her occasional purrs in her speech. Something that, while doesn't work in other mediums, works excellently here because of the fact that it's intended to be a campy show. Therefore, the more over-the-top ideas being implemented in this series, it actually works. I know this isn't the most serious iteration of the character, but it is definitely important to the character's history, and I think is the best iteration of the character the show could have. It's not trying to be more than it is. However, it's trying to be the best idea of what it could be, which is why it's so much higher than both the bottom of the barrel and Anne Hathaway. Well, not so much higher than Anne Hathaway, just a spot higher, which I already know I'm going to get yelled at for. I do think the Catwoman movie attempted to try to include some of these themes from the show, however, try to make them serious. Therefore, did not work. However, here, in the setting of the show, it works great. The campy performances, and sometimes not even campy, but just generally genius performances from these actresses. The cat-themed gadgets work so much better here than they do in the movie, where the character has this weird milk addiction and gets aroused by catnip. While this one does have some silly factors, it works much better because of the fact that the entire show itself is intended to be campy. Eartha Kitt is also very important to the character's history, as she was the first black woman to play the character. In fact, one of the first black characters in general on a network TV show. That wasn't a maid or some sort of throwaway character. This version of the character is important in so many ways. And even if you want to ignore all that, it's great on its own. Third place is Gotham, played by Cameron Bikonadova. I definitely mispronounced that. And Lily Simmons for the show's finale. This version, I think, has the best relationship with Bruce. The two really are yin and yang. One from a rich family, one from the streets. But both with the dark side and a bit of craziness in both of them. It does a really good job setting up the cat and bat dynamic. is very complicated and very layered, as is the character of Selina in this show. Her morality in the middle allows her to be included in many different storylines, either with Bruce, Gordon, the Sirens, or even Penguin. She's allowed to be more fleshed out because of the fact that she's the main character of a 5-season TV show. And while yes, she's baby Catwoman and not necessarily Catwoman yet, she does have the essence of the character already there from the very start. You can without a doubt see that she is going to become Catwoman from the very beginning of the show. I did find it a little weird that she doesn't have any screen time with her father on the show, who isn't her actual dad on the show. But Carmine Falcone and her are both main characters in the first season, so I would assume that they would have played with that, but they didn't. However, I guess that isn't a problem because most versions of the character is not related to Carmine for some reason, only the version in the comics and the Batman. She still has a complicated relationship with her mother, who is, let's say, not the best mother, which allows you to really feel bad for the character, with how she kinda idolized her own mom, thinking that she would one day come back to save her, only to then be technically robbed by her. This version also has a more subtle connection to cats. It's still there, but not necessarily more campy, but instead more realistic, that being that she just likes cats. This version of the character is not perfect. In fact, it isn't perfect. But a very, very good Catwoman. And I am sorry that I mispronounced her last name. However, Cameron does a great job playing the character. Second place is Zoe Kravitz, the only live-action version of the character that's been Carmine Falcone's daughter. A storyline that I really like and I really like seeing in live action. This version of Selina isn't a damsel or a lesser than Batman. Instead, she's his equal, which allows her to have more agency. I know some people aren't a fan of race swapping, however personally I'm with it as long as the actor is good, and I think Zoe Kravitz is perfect for the role. The character just looks like the character from the comics. Primarily year one. Now, I know some people aren't a fan of the costume. Personally, I thought it was fine for the first outing for the character. However, going forward, I do think the character needs a better costume. Which is kind of hinted at in the movie itself, so I hope it does happen. I think this version does a good job at being both empathetic, but also having the bad girl type vibe. She is still caring, such as being caring for a roommate, and even other innocent people she doesn't even know, while also being ruthless. The character's cat-themed is played with a lot more in this iteration, but it's still kept more subtle than, let's say, Halle Berry's iteration. It's done more realistically, even if it is more played with here. I think the only thing I do have a complaint about is her relationship with Bruce in this movie. As well, it's comic accurate, it doesn't really work for some reason here. The chemistry is lacking, and the romance feels kind of forced. In fact, the character, when interacting with Bruce, feels more or less like they're kind of setting up a crime-fighting partner group, like Batman and Robin, but Batman and Catwoman, rather than the cat and bat dynamic. It doesn't feel flirtatious, it feels more friends, or even best friends. Partners in fighting crime, but not necessarily partners in any romantic capacity. I do think that maybe it could work in the future, however, maybe this version could just stick to being friends. Although, yet again, perhaps it could work in the future. Which I hope it does, because I think that this version of Batman and this version of Catwoman are great. I just don't think they really go well together romantically. And number one that I like every single thing about is Batman Returns Michelle Pfeiffer. This version of Selina is not at all like the comics, at all. Yet, she is amazing and iconic. This version of the character has a creepy, sexy factor to her that makes her stand out every time she's on screen. In fact, my only complaint is that she's not on screen enough. Her relationship with Bruce, both in and out of costume, are the strongest parts of the movie. And that's saying a lot because the Penguin stuff is also amazing. Michelle's line reading are some of the best in all Batman media. It comes across so threatening, but also flirtatious. It's a mix of both of the iterations of the character from the comics, both villainous and kind of flirty. And the scene where Batman and Catwoman realize who each other are at the dance is just, in my personal opinion, one of the best scenes in all of Batman media. And I don't even mean just live action, I just mean in general. I'm really sad that the character didn't go on. at least not in live action. She does kinda appear in the Batman 89 tie-in comics, where the character I do think is pretty good, however not as good as the version in live action. Although, yet again, what can be? This is just iconic. And my personal favorite version of Catwoman across all media. And that's my ranking. I do apologize because I already know that some people are going to be upset that I ranked Anne Hathaway so low on this list, and probably upset that I ranked Zoe Kravitz so high on the list. However, yet again, it's my own personal opinion which you can disagree with. So please put down your own rankings down below, and that's it. Like always, please like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time, where we'll be ranking the live-action versions of Mr. Zsasz. So get excited. Bye!